Have you ever wondered, what exactly gave humans the right to take over the earth? Some might say it's because we're smart. We can make tools, grow crops, build houses, and even launch rockets into space. But today, I want to tell you something different. What truly allowed humans to dominate the world is our imagination. That's right, the stories we tell. The ones you encounter every single day: money, nations, corporations, even the balance in your bank account. These are all shared fictions we humans invented together. So today, let's talk about a wildly popular and equally controversial book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. You've probably at least heard of the book Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. It was written by Yuval Noah Harari, an Israeli historian who's especially good at telling stories. His book became a global sensation, so much so that even big names like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg are among his devoted readers. In Sapiens, Harari walks us through the entire arc of human history. From the cognitive revolution 70,000 years ago, to the agricultural revolution over 10,000 years ago, then through the rise of empires and religions that shaped the world for millennia, and finally, to the scientific revolution of the last 500 years that completely transformed our lives. Now you might be thinking, 70,000 years of history? That book must be massive. How long is this going to take? Don't worry. This video isn't going to be dry, and we're not just dumping dates and events on you. Instead, I've picked out the 4 most fascinating parts of the book. With a few fun and thought-provoking stories, we'll make sense of the sweeping journey of humankind, without the boredom. So let's start with the first story, the cognitive revolution that took place 70,000 years ago. Let's rewind the clock to 70,000 years ago. Back then, life for our ancestors was incredibly tough. No houses, no stable food supply. Their top priority every single day was simply staying alive until tomorrow. And yet, in the middle of this harsh existence, something strange happened. Humans started telling stories. What do we mean by telling stories? Well, say someone saw a lion nearby. Instead of just shouting, "Run," they might say, "There's a lion living by the river, don't go there at night." That was the first big upgrade in human language. We stopped just describing what's right in front of us, and started talking about things we couldn't see, touch, or even prove exist. And here's where it gets really interesting. This ability to imagine and share fiction gave Homo sapiens a huge edge over other human species, like the Neanderthals, who were competing with us for survival. But that raises a big question. How did storytelling end up being the key to humans ruling the world? So let's go back to that question. How could simply telling stories allow us to leave every other species in the dust? It might sound like magic, but it's actually pretty straightforward. Take animals like chimps or monkeys. Even the smartest of them can only live in groups of a few dozen before things get chaotic, because their communication just isn't built to handle large numbers. Humans? Totally different story. We can organize thousands, even millions of people to work together toward a common goal. Think about a stadium with tens of thousands of fans all chanting the same team's name. It's electric. Now imagine putting a group of monkeys in that same stadium. Yeah, chaos. So how do we do it? Because we humans can believe in things that don't physically exist, shared fictions. Nations, money, religion, corporations, None of these are real in the physical sense. But as long as enough people believe in them, they become powerful forces in our lives. Let's take a simple example, a $100 bill. It's just a piece of printed paper, right? But because we all agree it's worth $100, it can buy food, water, even gold. That's what Harari means when he says it was our ability to create and believe in fictional stories that led humans to the top of the food chain. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, Harari's idea of fictional stories kind of makes sense. And once you get it, you start seeing it everywhere. Take the concept of a nation. What is a nation, really? It's just a massive story we all agree to believe in, one that allows millions of strangers to follow the same rules, pay taxes, serve in the army, and even die for their country. Now think about companies. What happens when a company goes bankrupt? We make an announcement, and, boom, it's gone. But the office building is still standing, the employees are still there. So what actually disappeared? What disappeared was belief in the story of that company. That's the power of stories. Through shared imagination, humans built massive societies from the ground up. And it all began with that first step, somewhere around 70,000 years ago. Alright, that wraps up the cognitive revolution. Now let's move on to our second story. And this one's a bit counterintuitive. Because it challenges something we've been taught our whole lives. Was the invention of farming really a step forward, or a giant trap? We've all heard the same story growing up. Humanity shifted from hunting and gathering to farming, and that was a huge step forward. Stable food supplies meant people no longer had to roam around. They could settle down, eat regularly, and start building a more stable life. But in Sapiens, Harari flips that idea on its head. He says the agricultural revolution might actually be the biggest trap in human history. Sounds crazy, right? But think about it. Did life really get easier once we started farming? Not necessarily. In fact, when humans first took up agriculture, life may have actually gotten harder. Hunter-gatherers often only needed to spend a few hours a day foraging or hunting, then had the rest of the day to rest. But once farming began, people worked from sunrise to sunset, bent over in the fields, worrying about their crops day in and day out. So why did we choose this more exhausting way of life? Let's break it down a bit further. Harari makes a clever comparison in the book. It wasn't humans who domesticated wheat. It was wheat that domesticated us. Sounds like a joke, right? How could a plant possibly control us? But the more you think about it, the scarier it gets. When humans first began growing wheat, it probably started with simple logic. If we plant more, we'll have more food for the winter. But over time, wheat became something we couldn't live without. To grow it successfully, we had to plow, sow, water, fertilize, and guard the fields from animals and thieves. In other words, we started working for the wheat. Pouring in effort and labor, only to end up with a life that was harder than before. Even worse, wheat is a delicate crop. It needs constant care. So we built homes closer to the fields. Communities grew denser. Villages turned into towns. We thought we were choosing a safer, more comfortable life. But in reality, wheat tied us to the land, and turned us into full-time farmers. So, was the agricultural revolution really a step forward? Or was it a step into the cage? By now, you might be realizing, Even though agriculture seems like progress, it made everyday life for ordinary people a lot tougher. We started farming to make life easier. Instead, life got tied down by crops, by land, by an endless to-do list. And with farming came inequality. Some had more land, others had less. Diseases spread more easily. Wars became more frequent. The logic went, more food equals more security. But what we got was, more food, more people, more problems. And that's the trap. We had no choice but to grow more food to support the growing population, which led to an endless cycle of work, stress, and dependence. Sound familiar? Think about modern life: early alarms, packed subways, endless commutes, long hours under fluorescent lights. Are we really that different from our ancestors who worked sunrise to sunset for a handful of wheat? The agricultural revolution may have saved us from hunger, but it also reshaped our destiny, and not necessarily for the better. So was it progress? Or just a new form of bondage? Harari doesn't give a definitive answer, but he does invite us to think deeply. And now that we've wrapped up the agricultural revolution, let's move on to the next big story: how humans used imaginary forces, like nations, money, and religion, to bring scattered tribes together into massive civilizations. Let's fast forward a bit. After the agricultural revolution, populations exploded. People settled down. Villages became city-states, and city-states became nations. But have you ever wondered, how did so many people, speaking different languages, practicing different customs, worshipping different gods, end up unified under one system? Was it through war? Conquest? Sure, violence played a role. But it didn't solve the core problem: how do you get tens of thousands, or even millions, of people to cooperate? You can't just call everyone up and say, "Hey, here's today's plan." You can't hold daily meetings with 1 million people. So once again, humans turned to their greatest weapon: stories. Only this time, it wasn't about warning each other of lions near the river. Now it was, "This gold coin is worth a sheep. This king rules by divine right. This god will protect you." Sounds abstract? Don't worry, I'll walk you through 3 powerful fictional systems that unified humankind throughout history, and still do today: empires, religions, and money. The first grand story that unified humanity was the story of empires. Think about it: how do you govern an empire with millions, or even billions, of people? They don't speak the same language. Their customs clash. Their gods are different. That's why empires weren't held together by violence alone. They were held together by a story everyone could buy into. The Persian Empire claimed, "We are the guardians of cosmic order." Alexander said, "Greek culture is the light of the world." When the Qin Emperor unified China, he enforced standardized scripts and axle widths. It was a story of national sameness. The core message? It doesn't matter where you're from. If you follow the rules, you belong. Cold? Maybe. But incredibly effective. And these stories lasted. Even though the empires are long gone, their legacy remains. We still use Roman law. We speak languages descended from Latin. We build in neoclassical styles. Empires were massive storytelling machines that turned strangers into citizens. But even with shared rules, people still needed shared meaning. That's where religion came in. The second story system that unified humanity was religion. If empires provided a rulebook, religion offered a meaning system. One that explained suffering, death, morality, and redemption. Before ID cards and credit scores, how could you trust someone you'd never met? You didn't know them, but if you both believed in the same God, followed the same moral codes, even if you didn't speak the same language, you could basically trust each other. That's the power of religion. Christianity, for example, united millions of peasants, knights, and nobles under the idea of a single God during medieval Europe. Islam did the same, one language, one book, one law, spanning huge parts of Africa, Asia, and Europe. Buddhism spread east through the Silk Road, deeply influencing China, Japan, and shaping philosophies that still impact our lives today. Harari calls religion humanity's first great operating system. One that let vast numbers of strangers live, cooperate, and even die for the same shared story. But beyond belief, there's a story even more widespread than religion, one that nearly everyone alive today believes in. And that brings us to the third unifying force, money. The third great unifying system of humankind is something we all use every single day, money. Sounds odd, right? Money feels so real, so practical. How could it be just another fictional story? But think about it, a paper bill is essentially worthless on its own. You can't eat it. You can't wear it. The paper's barely worth a few cents. Yet if you believe it represents value, and I believe it too, then it can buy food, pay for services, and even enable millions of people to trade across cultures and continents, without sharing a single word. That's not so different from religion. In fact, money might be even stronger. You might not believe in a God, but you do believe in money. You might not sacrifice for a holy text, but you'll switch cities, change jobs, and work overtime for a better paycheck. Most importantly, money breaks down cultural, linguistic, and geographic barriers. Christians can do business with Muslims. Indians can start companies with Americans. Why? Because everyone believes in the story of money. Harari says it best. Money is the most universal and most successful religion in human history. It doesn't require rituals, prayers, or holidays. Its only commandment is, believe in me, and I'll work. So no matter your nationality, your religion, your education, if you believe in money, the system will accept you. And with these three great stories, empires, religions, and money we now understand how humans moved from scattered tribes to a globally connected world. But this wasn't the end. Up next is the final, and perhaps most transformative, shift in human history. The scientific revolution. The three systems we've just discussed, empires, religion, and money, are all based on belief. But what about science? Surprisingly, the foundation of the scientific revolution wasn't a new invention or a brilliant discovery. It started with something much simpler, and far more radical. I don't know, but I want to find out. In the 16th century, most people still believed Earth was the center of the universe. But a few curious troublemakers started observing the stars, charting their paths, and realized something wasn't adding up. Then Galileo took a telescope, pointed it at the night sky, and shattered the old worldview. From that moment on, humans began approaching everything with doubt and experimentation. That mindset, the willingness to question, test, and revise, is the true spirit of modern science. As Harari puts it, the true revolution of science wasn't in revealing truth, but in admitting how much we still don't know. Sounds philosophical, right? But this humble idea led to changes bigger than we could have ever imagined. Science brought new ideas. But it didn't grow in isolation, it needed help. To thrive, science needed funding, manpower, and missions into the unknown. Enter two old friends, empires and capital. Empires provided ships, soldiers, and explorers. Capital offered investment and resources. Scientists brought maps, tools, new technologies. Together, they formed a highly efficient system. Take Europe's age of exploration. It wasn't just about adventure, it was about calculating the size of the world, finding resources, and claiming new territories. Many scientific missions were backed by empires and financed by merchants. Newton's theory of gravity, developed under the Royal Society, backed by state funding. Captain Cook's expeditions, packed with botanists, geologists, and astronomers, science plus conquest plus extraction, all rolled into one. Harari describes it clearly. Science, empire, and capital created a self-reinforcing feedback loop. Science delivers technology, empires use tech to expand capital, profits, capital reinvests in science. Sound familiar? Today's tech giants, defense contractors, and venture capital firms are still running on this very same loop. There's no doubt, science has achieved miracles. We've cured diseases, flown into space, connected the globe in real time. We can manipulate genes, build nuclear weapons, and simulate consciousness. It's like we unlocked God mode. But Harari warns. Science doesn't equal happiness. It can solve problems, but it can't answer meaning. It can boost crop yields, but not tell us how to distribute food fairly. It can build bombs, but not decide when, or whether, to use them. And now, we face problems that go deeper than ever before. AI, genetic engineering, man-machine hybrids, even dreams of immortality. Humans are no longer just taming nature, we're rewriting ourselves. Harari writes that we may be evolving from Homo sapiens into Homo deus, the godlike human. But no one knows where that road leads. And that's the biggest paradox of all. Our power has grown beyond imagination. But our wisdom might still be stuck in the past. A bit heavy, right? That's why in the final segment, we'll take a step back and reflect. What has Sapiens really taught us? What should we carry forward? And what should we keep questioning? Alright, we've now walked through the 4 core chapters of Sapiens. The cognitive revolution taught us how to tell stories, turning forest-dwelling tribes into global rulers. The agricultural revolution made us believe we controlled our food, but we ended up slaves to the food system. The unifying stories, empires, religion, and money, turned strangers into collaborators and built the world we live in today. And the scientific revolution? It began with the words, "I don't know," and went on to change the planet, and now, it's starting to change us. So, what's the common thread in all these stories? It's this. Fiction made us powerful. But it also made us dangerous. We create meaning, but we can also be trapped by it. We tell stories, and then we start to believe they're real. That's why Harari doesn't give us final answers. Instead, he keeps asking the same question. Is the world you believe in, the one you live in, really a choice you made? If after watching this video, you've started to question, even just a little bit, what you believe every day. If it's made you stop and think, even for a moment, then the book was worth reading, and this video was worth making. Oh, and before I go, I have one last question for you. What do you think will be humanity's next big revolution? ***. Let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with more friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We'll keep bringing you more exciting historical stories. Thank you all for watching, and see you in the next video.